Hello everyone, and welcome to this Cedar Bay webinar entitled Preparing for an IFS Upgrade. My name is Sam Kelly. I'm a Business Development Manager at Cedar Bay, and I'm joined by my colleague Joe Rosser today, who is our Head of Customer Engagement. We'd firstly like to take this opportunity to thank you for joining today's session. We do appreciate that some of you are joining us from the other side of the world, and this is obviously a fairly early morning meeting for you all. Just before we go further into the session, I'd like to cover some housekeeping points with you. You will notice that you're on mute, but we do very much welcome your questions in the question box, and we will answer those questions towards the end of the session. We also will be showing you 2 poll questions throughout the session, and we would very much appreciate your feedback to these questions. And finally, a copy of this recorded webinar will be made available to you after the session. Joe, if we could move on now to the agenda, I will take you through the agenda and then hand over to Joe. So the agenda for today's session is obviously covering the key considerations that you would consider before the upgrade, looking at activities involved within an upgrade, and obviously preparing your business for that upgrade. And at this point, I would like to hand over to Joe.
Thanks, Sam. I'll move on to my very first slide. These are some of the key considerations that we would recommend you review before upgrading. Most of these have come from feedback from clients. If I take them, I won't go through every single one, but we're talking about, is there a compelling event? Is there something going on in your business which is driving you to upgrade IFS? And that could be a number of things, from a change in the business to a change in your technical platform, or a change in your technological environment in terms of needing an upgrade for a software course. It might simply be that you're not optimizing IFS, that you've got a huge amount of functionality that's been delivered with IFS, but for various reasons you've not actually made the best of it recently. It could even be the fact that you implemented IFS 5 or 10 years ago, your business has changed, and the current configuration of IFS is not really relatable to the type of business that you're doing right now. Might be that your business is going through change or experiencing growth, or it could be linked to a previous comment that there's been some knowledge erosion, that the people that were involved in the original implementation are either no longer in the company or have transferred into different areas within the company, and that knowledge has been lost. And obviously that can have an impact that people actually using the software today aren't as comfortable, as familiar with it as they would like to be. Other issues to consider when it comes to actually preparing for an upgrade and actually doing an upgrade: do you have employees within the business today that were involved in the original implementation from IFS? Because clearly that does give you a little bit of additional knowledge and would help those particular people to, they can add some value in your new project. Also, have you done a business case? Obviously, we're very aware that there are times when you do an upgrade like this, it can be costly. Even if you've got a very small project team, you may be taking people out of the business, and therefore having some sort of financial business case to help you justify it might be something that you need to consider. You might need some help with that, in which case Cedar Bay are very happy to assist you. And finally, do you have the right support network in place? And that can mean anything from functional knowledge to technical knowledge to senior management buy-in, and also the technical environment. So just some key areas. As far as market trends are concerned and the sort of expectations, we've noticed in the last 5 years, things have changed. People now want better management information. Gone are the days where you looked at last month's financial figures and started to predict what you were going to do next month and start to make your decisions at that point. People now want real-time information converted from just meaningless data into information that managers can use to make the decisions. Also, the user experience. You go back a decade, the percentage of people in the workplace who are actually comfortable with computers was much lower than it is today. Nowadays, a lot of people are using computers to book holidays, book shopping, order all sorts of things online, and therefore looking at a computer screen, there are expectations from your users, and we need to make sure that the business software that they're using on a day-to-day basis reflects some of the trends and expectations of users. Otherwise, you can lose buy-in. People lose faith in what they're doing. Also, agility and flexibility. The pace of change in the marketplace right now is so fast that you need to know that if you get a new order that's going to change the way you operate, you can actually change the configuration of IFS to enable you to get the best out of that order and to assist you. You don't want to be changing processes and finding that it's becoming more cumbersome to actually meet the expectations to deliver to your clients. So if you combine all those together, what we're basically saying is there also needs to be some business ownership. Because again, you go back a decade or so, ERP tended to be in the domain of the IT people, and that's still great. IT specialists are really beneficial to every organisation, but you also need to get some ownership from the business. Obviously, the business needs to buy into this, the business needs to be able to use the software, and therefore they need to be involved in the upgrade. Otherwise, you can give them a perfectly configured system that nobody wants to use. So combine all those 4 points together, you have one fully integrated solution that everybody's comfortable to use. Also, the other aspect is the term upgrade. This means different things to different people. So if I just sort of challenge some of that thinking, first of all, what's driving it? What is the compelling event, or what's the issue that you have within your business that lends you to consider an upgrade? And there's 4 ideas here. It could be the fact that your business model has changed. You might have a new warehouse, you might have a new site, you might be changing the way you work, you might be moving from B2B to a more of a direct-to-consumer environment. You might need to secure a technical platform. You might be wanting to go into the cloud. You might have to change because your Oracle version is becoming obsolete. There might be a number of areas within your technical arena that forces a new environment. It might be something as simple as the support fees. Obviously, we all know that IFS have got multiple versions of their software out in the marketplace. But as soon as you move more than 2 versions behind, the annual support can increase. Clearly, it's much more cost weary for them if they're having to support 5 or 6 different versions of their software. So they're doing everything they can to encourage you to be on the more frequent, more recent releases. It might simply be that you need an upgrade because you need some new functionality, and you know the functionality you're needing is in a later version of IFS than the one you currently use. However, it's also important to look at the constraints, and there's a few of those here. Clearly, when you're doing an upgrade, it can be quite a big project, and that can have an impact on your business operations. It is important that the business buy into the software, but at the same time, we need to be very aware that the business has got to run in parallel to this upgrade project. So we need to make sure that we're not doing something that's going to have too much of a negative impact on operations, and we can change the shape of an upgrade to minimize the impact to the business if needs be. Other areas, obviously the available resource. There aren't too many people now that have a dedicated IT project team, and therefore you need to start to think about the people that you would want on your project team and the impact that's going to have on your business. In addition to that, you're talking about cost factors here. There's a number of different cost factors. Obviously, there's purchasing of the new version, although IFS will give you a new version free of charge. There may be a new module that you need that you have to pay for. There might be additional licensing. There might be a change to the Oracle environment that you need to pay for. So it's important that we can help you to give you a complete idea of the costs involved. And there, obviously, the costs I've just mentioned are the ones that perhaps you can control from an IT perspective, but there are also operational costs in terms of, if we were to take 4 or 5 people out of the business to work on your upgrade project team, who's going to do the job they do if they're spending 1 or 2 days a week with us? So you might need to backfill those positions. That is a cost that obviously needs to be factored in. Likewise, technical. There's a number of technical considerations for you to be aware of. Obviously, if you've got a current version that is only one version behind the latest version, that's still a good project. But if you're 3 or 4 versions behind the latest version, that's a much bigger project. There's going to be more change involved, and therefore we need to understand the change management and the communication management involved in this project. Other areas to consider are modifications. With the latest versions of IFS, there really is very little need to have modifications in most of the businesses we're working in. There are some things that are very, very specialist and therefore need to be maintained via a modification. But with the new functionality available in IFS, you can use their extensibility module, which allows you to put in custom screens, custom fields. You can make some changes with the data. You can do a lot of things without actually having to do a bespoke modification that needs annual support fees or incurs annual support fees from IFS. So we would say let's just look at the number of modifications that you anticipate and review before you make too many commitments. Likewise, interfaces. A lot of people have got third-party packages that do part of the manufacturing work. It might be design tools, it might be CAD tools, it might be third-party in terms of external CRM systems or equipment maintenance solutions. All those interfaces need to be considered. We need to review the information that needs to be exchanged between IFS and those third-party systems, just to give us an idea of the full IFS or ERP environment. And finally, skill sets. Clearly, older versions of IFS use different skills than the new version, particularly if you're going towards a cloud environment. If you're using IFS hosted cloud, you will have to become accustomed to the IFS build place. There will be different skills that your IT team need to be made aware of. It's not difficult, it's not a case of complete reskilling, but there will be some areas of education that your IT people will benefit from prior to feeling too comfortable with the new upgrade. So challenges and benefits. We start off with the challenges. Clearly, when you're doing an upgrade, there are some impacts. Most of these are manageable, but it's important that you're aware of them ahead of the upgrade so that you can put some sort of risk mitigation in place where necessary. Obviously, you've got the potential disruption to the business while an upgrade is taking shape, and that might be because of key individuals moving to do the upgrade rather than the day job. It might be the interaction with clients if you're changing the communication and the documentation going between yourselves and clients, likewise between yourself and suppliers. So it's important to consider all these and also use these challenges as an opportunity to improve where appropriate. Other challenges could be the number, size and purpose of the sites you have. Sometimes, we see an upgrade whereby there's an extra new site, might be a new warehouse, you need to add that in as a location. You might also find that because you've got different numbers of sites now, or you've got a new chart of accounts, you want to reconfigure the software, which might mean a little bit more of a short-term problem, but long-term you'll reap the benefits. Also consider the risk to the status quo, because clearly a project of an ERP upgrade can take months rather than days, and therefore you need to be aware of the impact that may have on your business. We were then talking about a few sort of technical issues here. Are you going to the cloud? Would you prefer to stay on premise? And what about the data? Because wherever you put the data, whether it be cloud or premise, on premise, you do need to consider if you've got 10 years worth of data in your current solution, it really wouldn't make an awful lot of sense to transfer all of that outdated data into a new version. You've got an opportunity to clean it up, to cleanse it, to remove any obsolete information and start with a completely new slate in terms of your new version. Also, you may find that because there's so many changes with the databases, that's actually being forced upon you to a degree. And finally, as I said before, number of versions that you need to upgrade. If you've got 4 or 5 versions behind, it can be a much bigger project, so it's important just to be aware of that. However, there are benefits. Clearly, if you're on the latest and greatest version of IFS, you've got a lot of new functionality available to you. It can be a good idea to have a look at the functionality and have a look at your current business processes and just make sure that you benefit from the new functions that are available. You have opportunities available to you as well with this new functionality and with this type of a project, because it does give you an opportunity to talk to people that are perhaps struggling with part of IFS and enable them to get a little bit of additional training, and that can be quite useful. Again, linked to the education side of things, not only can you change current users and change their understanding of how they can operate the system, but you've also got an opportunity to bring new users into an IFS arena and train them from day one with the experts and the people that know IFS the best. It gives you a huge opportunity to optimize ERP. We do find that an original implementation of IFS and an upgrade can mean that you're talking months from when you first start to look at the product, and then you actually realize the benefits from it, and therefore a continuous improvement of ERP can mean that you're always optimizing your ERP version. However, a lot of companies find that continuous improvement a challenge. So if you've got an upgrade, it is a great opportunity to say, well, look, we know there's been some changes in one of our business areas. We might need to improve planning, we might need to improve quality, and therefore let's use this opportunity to reconfigure a particular department and make sure that we make the best use and get the advantage of the new configuration and new functionality. Also, it's a great opportunity for you to improve the user experience. In each version of IFS that comes out, there have been some improvements to the interactions between the user and the software. There's obviously the new Arena user environment, which is absolutely game-changing for a lot of users. It's a little bit of a while to get used to, but once you're used to the Arena configuration, it does give you huge flexibility and can dramatically improve your experience and the benefit that you'll have from IFS. And finally, clearly, if you are struggling from inflated support costs at the moment, go on to the latest version. It will reduce those support costs, remove modifications from the software. You'll also reduce your maintenance figure. So there are some financial gains from that. And finally, cleansing of the data. Obviously, if you've got garbage in there, you'll get garbage coming out. If you can actually replace outdated data, such as your bill of materials, outdated suppliers, some of the organisational structure changes that you may have that have been changed in the interim period, you will get much more benefit from a better performing solution, but also a more updated and therefore user-friendly solution.
So here is our first poll question. What's your biggest concern with an upgrade? A, cost, B, time frame, C, resource, D, business buy-in, E, project team. If you could let us know your thoughts, it would be very much appreciated.
Oh, we're getting responses coming in thick and fast, Sam. That's good. Okay. Just give it another minute because we've only got 50% of the input so far. And it's looking evenly split, isn't it, Sam? Surprising.
It is indeed, yeah.
I think, yeah, cost and time frame seem to be the two bigger areas. Okay, I think we're about there. Thanks so much for that. That's really useful for us to see that, because I think, you know, we talk to so many customers about implementations, and it's useful to see the areas that are causing you the most concern. Okay, so if I move forward, just bear with me. There we go. There are different ways of approaching an upgrade, and not everybody is aware of all these. So if you just bear with me, I'd like to explain the different options available to you. We believe there are 4 key options. The first one is the basic IFS technical upgrade. This is where you would send your current IFS database to the IFS technical people. They put it through, for want of a better term, their sausage machine, where they literally grind everything from the current version to the latest version. give it back to you. You then go through all the testing. Any issues you'll send back to them. They'll rectify the issues, send it back for a second test, and then hopefully you're in good shape. And that can be absolutely perfect for some users. It might be exactly what they want. It does tend to vary according to the age of the solution. If you're only one version behind and you've got relatively up-to-date data, that can be the perfect path for you. However, there might be areas that you need a little bit more than that. You might also prefer to be in a little bit more control of what you're doing, so that you manage the time frame, you manage the work, and you can also control the content. And that's why we've sort of created a technical refresh option. And with that, what you do with that is you'll get IFS to install the latest version of the software into your environment, whether it be on-premise or in the cloud. And we will then work with you to cleanse all the data and to help you, support you through the testing process, so that you can control the time frame, you can control the cost. You still get the latest and greatest version and all that functionality available to you, but you're in a little bit more control, and you can make sure that you can choose which data to cleanse. You can remove any outdated data, and you get the benefit of the new version with any of the disadvantages, if you like, of the sort of outdated data and the garbage that you don't need. So again, for the example when I used before, if you've got a version of software that's say 5 years or more, you are going to have some outdated information in that. You might find that you've updated your customers, your suppliers, bill of material, there might be change in your organizational structure. An upgrade is a great opportunity for you to tweak all that. It does have a little bit more reliance on your technical team, but it actually can work quite nicely if you do that option. The next one is the cleanse and refresh. This can also be called cleanse and improve. This is where you kind of you get the benefit of making some change to your business processes, but you don't necessarily have to re-implement and change every process. So for instance, you might have a new chart of accounts. You might choose that because of that, you want to re-implement finance with the new chart of accounts reflected, but you don't actually want to make too many changes to your manufacturing or supply chain environment, because they don't want to have an impact on this. They really just want a very basic change, because they don't have an appetite for that change at the moment. So what you would do then is you would take the technical refresh option where we'll help you cleanse the data, we'll help you reconfigure your finance department and your finance package, but we'll do the bare minimum to the manufacturing supply chain areas. So for instance, then we just train in the absolutely necessary changes. So it might just be that we train in Arena, which is the new user interface. We might just train in the new fields that have been supplied with the latest version. So in other words, we'll start off with which fields are you using now? Okay, well that one's changed, so we'll just train in that particular change and just explain that to you. And that would be an area whereby you can dictate the degree of change that your business can cope with. It might be one department of change, it might be 3 departments of change. You can detect and you can decide what you feel is most appropriate for your business. The final one is the complete re-implementation, whereby you say to us, well, we originally implemented this 10 years ago. We now have a completely different type of organisation where most of our departments could actually benefit from some change. So we could really benefit from you re-implementing everywhere and reviewing all of our process to keep them all up to date. And it might be that even with that one, you say we want all departments reviewed, but we don't actually want every single process updated, because we're aware some of them are working exactly like we need them. So those bottom 2, cleanse and refresh, re-implementation, you are in complete control of the size of both of those options, but they do involve a little bit of business improvement, business process change. The first 2 are more technical, a little bit more IT heavy and a little bit less business requirement in those. The other thing is, if you look at the right hand side, there's a lot of considerations for you to look into. Obviously the big one there, return on investment. It can be quite a costly exercise to do an upgrade, so it is important, if you know that you want to receive return on investment within 12 months, a re-implementation may not be the way to go, because that can take 10, 11 months to do. And therefore, that might not be the option that's suitable for you. If you're prepared to have a 3-year return on investment and you see the ERP process change is key to your business, that's obviously more applicable. Obviously, then you need to look at the budget availability. That can dictate the type of upgrade you want. Business engagement, which areas have got the time and the resources to help you with business process change. Time frame, if you want everything done within 6 months or you need everything done by a particular date, that can dictate whether you need a full re-implementation or just a cleanse and improve. The user commitment, the age of solution, IT capability. And one of the key elements here to consider is this upgrade led by the business, or is it IT driven? And I would say, regardless of the options, you really ought to have some sort of business leading this with support from IT. It is a business solution after all, so most companies would like to make sure that the business has some input, but it might be that IT need to step up more with some of them than others. Okay, as far as the team is concerned for an upgrade, our recommendation would be as follows. You allocate somebody as a project sponsor, and this project sponsor should be quite a senior individual within the company. It's often an operations director, a managing director, or a finance director, because this is the person that's saying, I've given you X amount of money, I've asked you to deliver this to me within X amount of months, and this is the scope. I want to make sure that you don't move away from any of those figures and that the project delivers on time to budget within my expectations. And therefore, the person who holds that position needs to be senior enough that they can influence the rest of the organisation to ensure that what is required is actually delivered. The project sponsor is supported by a steering committee. This is usually a group, ideally no more than 8-10 people, and that would consist of a couple of people from ourselves, say Cedar Bay, plus some senior people from your business. So again, ideally you're talking about senior people from operations, from finance, from supply chain, from quality, potentially HR, who would just ensure that the project team are supported 100%, and any issues that may arise, whether they be operational project related, they can be overcome so that you get the best project delivered and they get the best result from an upgrade project without having a negative impact on the day-to-day business operations. They then need to be supported by a project manager, who ideally is somebody chosen within the business to actually coordinate the activities with the Cedar Bay delivery team. So you would have a project manager who would work with us to create a project plan, agree milestones, and work with the appropriate resource from your company to ensure that we deliver the project as required. They will be supported by a couple of groups of people. First of all, the functional leads. So you might have people from each of your key departments that would want to be involved to ensure that any changes to the configuration in their area of expertise are managed appropriately, that they've agreed what needs to be changed, they've agreed the scope, and any process change has actually been laid down by themselves, even though these people may not be involved day to day. They may just be the decision makers, and ideally they are decision makers who are actually reflecting the company requirement and ensuring that that's what's being delivered by their staff. And the final group of people are the key process owners. These would be people that are doing the day-to-day activities, attending the requirements workshops, helping with the testing, helping with the configuration, helping with the training at the end. So put that into perspective, again, using finance as an example. Your functional lead might be a finance manager or a finance controller, but the key process owners might be people who are perhaps working as a general ledger clerk or accounts payable or accounts receivable clerk, and potentially they both are acting on requirements given to them by the finance manager, but they're doing more of the day-to-day activities to leave the finance manager, finance controller available to do his day job or her day job. And obviously, if we're taking these people out to do the project, you may just need to consider backfilling them for 2 or 3 days a week during the duration of the project. Okay, so again, time frame. This is quite key, and a lot of people underestimate this. So the slide here really has been put together to help you appreciate the reality of what's going on. I've put along the middle there the different processes that are usually involved in an upgrade. And even with the bare technical upgrade, a lot of this needs to happen. You need to get the new software installed. You need to define the scope of the project, how much process change is required. Even with a technical upgrade, you have to have some sort of testing. Therefore, you need to have people from different areas of the business to do that testing. Otherwise, they just may not buy into it at the end of it. They may not, may be confused with what they're saying. You need to understand the processes that are key to the business to make sure that whether there be process change or just testing of those areas, you need to understand which of those processes exist, which processes are going to be involved, and therefore who needs to be testing them to make sure that they work effectively. Because of that, identify the data that you need. This may be a case of cleansing the data, or more likely it's a case of which data do we need to put into the system to test it to make sure that we've got what we need to keep the processes that worked in, say, app 7.5 working in apps cloud or later. So using that data is very important, and obviously it's imperative that the technical team and the project prepare that data and help add it into the new solution when it's being built. And when we're talking about building the solution, we're talking about configuring the new version of the software and also putting the appropriate data in there to run the processes required. And again, even with a technical refresh, some of that is absolutely necessary. Once you've built it, document it, get everybody in the business to sign up to it. Yes, this is what I want, this is the degree of change I needed, I'm comfortable with this or I'm not. Once they've signed off that what we intend to deliver is appropriate, they can then test it. That's obviously another iterative process. Test it. Once it's working according to the project team satisfaction, you then expand the testing to the users. So you do some UAT, and this is a great way of training the users into the new version of the software, introducing them to new screens, new fields on the screens, and potentially new processes. You can't do too much testing, you can't have too much training. It is absolutely imperative to make sure that when you go live with the new version, there are no surprises. So a few end-to-end process tests would be absolutely essential in our view. And then finally, you go live, and that should be, one hopes, almost a non-event. So again, if you're looking at all that, it can take months, not weeks, and you will need, and see at the bottom of that, you'll start off with your key project team involved in all those areas. But once you get towards the testing, the project team are really then supporting the end users, and they start to hand over the new version of the software to a wider audience in order to encourage them to learn the project, learn the new solution as much as possible. Again, the idea being that once you go live, people can carry on day-to-day work without too many hiccups. So, success factors. In order to achieve success from an upgrade, there are a few things that we would recommend that you do consider, a few points that really do help improve your success with an upgrade project. The first one is, please don't underestimate the importance of this. We do need involvement from your senior leadership team, directors, key managers, the MD, the CEO, because you're using ERP to reflect all the business processes within the company. And therefore, if this project's going to work, key people in the company need to be aware of what's happening and need to support it. Obviously, you're going to find that there will be resource issues from time to time. There might be business issues. There might be conflicts in terms of who needs who where. If your senior leadership team are on board, they can help smooth over those conflicts quite easily. Also, if there are decisions to be made whereby there might be a key point in the duration of the project where a big decision needs to be made because two different departments integrate together, somebody's got to make a decision to say, well, I want it to go this way, and appreciate that doesn't suit everybody. You do need somebody from the senior leadership team to make those big decisions. Likewise, you need the appropriate focus within the company. This is going to impact a lot of people and potentially have quite an impact over the next coming a year or two with the way business processes are used and the way the operation of the company continues, and therefore it's important that we have the appropriate focus within the company for all aspects of the project, even if it's just as far as communicating is concerned, absolutely essential. Likewise, empower the appropriate project manager. A project manager sometimes is having to still resource from various different departments to ensure that the project is delivered appropriately, and therefore they need a certain level of seniority or decision-making ability. So ideally, your project manager is trusted completely by the senior leadership team and has sufficient authority to be able to walk into areas of the business and say, I'm sorry, but I do need, Fred, Joe, Tom to come and help out this workshop. Otherwise, it's going to have a serious impact on the project. Then obviously, once they've gone in and got the appropriate business input, it's important then to keep that resource committed until the end of the project. It doesn't work if we have different resources allocated to different elements of the project in terms of the time frame. If you've got people agreeing a requirement and they then back out of the project before testing, you lose that continuity, you lose that understanding of why is this requirement as it is. Why am I testing this? It doesn't work. You need to have that overall commitment to ensure that the requirements that were given early doors are actually the requirements that are still valid throughout the lifetime of the project, and that the business resource testing them understands what they're testing and why. Similarly, the risks. There are times that we need to understand the risk to both the project and the business because one impacts the other. The two of them integrate throughout the entire lifetime, and therefore there might be times within the business calendar that it simply is not appropriate to be concentrating on a project of this nature. So therefore it might be that you'll say to our project managers, look, please, there are 2 weeks between this period and this period that the business needs to stop focusing on the project and needs to focus on some business activity. As long as we understand that, that's absolutely fine. We can plan around it. Likewise, if there's a particular individual that is absolutely crucial to a particular business activity, or who, for instance, becomes ill or may have a genuine reason to be out of the business for a particular part of the project, as long as we understand, we can mitigate that as best as possible. The project can still continue, can still be a success. The final one here, I think, is probably the most important, customizations. We don't want to be modifying the IFS solution if we don't need to. That's more costly. It also reduces your flexibility. If business change is coming in the future so that you can be more agile, you can adapt to changes brought on in the business by your customers or external factors. If you've got modifications, sometimes they can hold you back, whereas customizations you will have complete control over, so therefore resource within your company can change those and tweak those as business change is required and demanded by the business environment. Obviously, throughout all of this, there needs to be some sort of underpinning change management and communication plan in place. This could have an impact on people's everyday lives, every process they're doing, every activity they're doing, and therefore it's important that you communicate appropriately to the business why you're doing the project, the benefits of the project, and from a week to week, the people involved and the activities that they're going to be expected to do, and also update the wider user base on the progress so people realise it's on its way, it's a good thing, and it's moving forward in a positive way.
And the final poll question now then, please. Which version of IFS applications would you be upgrading from? 7.5, 8, 9, 10, or if you could answer if you're not currently an IFS user, please. You can see that there's a very high percentage of votes in, Joe.
Absolutely, yes, and a lot of them in apps 8, which is, I suppose, not entirely surprising, but a lot of you out there got a huge amount of functionality you're not able to use, whereas the new version of the software you would get some tremendous benefits from, so that's interesting. Excellent, because in apps 8 there are no dashboards, there's no arena available to you. there's been some dramatic improvements in planning and quality. So there's a lot of functionality available out there that you could benefit from. So that's great. Okay. So how can we help? If you are interested and you would like us to work with you on helping you prepare for the upgrade or deliver the upgrade, we are happy to do both. All we would need from you is a list of the IFS components and modules you're currently licensed for. We can help you access that as well if you don't know how to get that list. We can advise you how to do that. If you do have modifications, let us know which functional areas those modifications are. And also for your business case, have a look to see how much you're paying each year on maintenance for those modifications. Because, I mean, we've had situations, I think one of the biggest highlights we had was a client who was on at 7.5, went to apps 9. So even without all the latest great software, they had 125 modifications. We had a 10-month project, and at the end of it, they had 0 modifications. So admittedly, a lot of them were reports, and a lot of them were small tweaks, but obviously a tremendous business case for them to get rid of those modifications. Also, look at the expected time frame. Typically, we're talking 5 to 12 months for an upgrade. If it goes on longer than 12 months, people can become a little bit project weary. So it's important, if that is the case, that the HR and change management programs are in place. Sometimes it has to be that long, but at least let's be aware of it. But if you give us an idea of what it is that you're trying to achieve and when, we can create a project plan that is applicable. Okay, also resource, obviously, it's good for us to be aware how much resource you have available, who you would intend to allocate to the project. Some people just give us, half a dozen people. Some people have a team of 20 with a core team of 5 or 6, but then an additional team to support them. And that can be great. So as long as we know, we can work with you to come up with a project plan that's achievable for your business. There are no 2 implementation projects or re-implementation projects that are identical, so we have to adapt and work with you on that. The final thing is the technical infrastructure, because clearly if it's cloud, if it's on-premise, if you've got a number of interfaces that you need, this can all have an impact on scoping the project. But if you're able to give us these issues, an Excel sheet with your list of components, the functional areas where you've got modifications, an idea of how long it is that you'd like your project to run, if you've got a project team in place, and whether you'd like it cloud, whether you've got a number of interfaces that you require, we can actually give you some idea of scope so that you can at least start setting an appropriate budget and start planning on when it is you'd like to move forward. And finally, just to give you a bit of information on ourselves, if we are helping you with this, Cedar Bay have had a number of successful implementations of brand new IFS implementations, but also projects where we've upgraded. And we've done and supported technical upgrades, technical refreshes, enhance and improves, and also full re-implementations. And we've done that with a really good team of consultants. I have to say, I'm very proud of our consultants, because most of them have got a really good combination of business experience as well as IFS application knowledge. A lot of them have come from industry. So instead of just saying to you, theoretically this would work well, most of them can use their background knowledge to say to you, well, actually, I've had that situation in the past. This is the way we dealt with it. I would recommend that. And also, as you probably know, sometimes it's difficult to appreciate how best practice can be used in your environment. We will always recommend industry best practice as the way to go. If you push back, that's fine, but we'll let you know, well, actually, we found in this situation, typically people have preferred to do this way, and this actually is quite successful, gives you the most benefits, and we will challenge back if needs be. And we'll do that particularly to avoid customizations and modifications if they're not necessary, but also because we have had feedback from clients in the past where there are numbers of different ways. Often for most processes, you can attack a process from perhaps anything from 3 to 6 different ways. So our consultants will recommend to you which of the 2 are the most common and which are the 2 that are likely to give you the most benefit, and recommend the best method forward. So that it saves you time, because you're not looking at 6 options, you're looking at 2. but also it gives you an idea of the potential and the capability of the options that you actually need, and gives you a little bit of guidance as to which way is best. We have a number of IFS certified consultants, and that number is ever changing, where all of our consultants are instantly put on the IFS education program. They're all learning various skills within IFS, and therefore we keep very much aligned with the IFS methodology, and are also aligned with the constant learning that's coming from IFS, so that new areas of functionality are being deployed in later versions. We will learn that new functionality and give you the benefit of the experience that we've had with it. We like to collaborate with you. We like to work in partnership with our clients. We don't like to do things to you. We don't want to be sitting in the background configuring everything and say, there you are, off you pop, get on with it. We like to work with you, have your agreement every step of the way, build and educate the end users, and leave you with a system that you are empowered to use without us, so that you can then move forward using a little bit of your own knowledge, but also learning how to not just use the system that we're leaving you with, but be aware if there are some changes that you might need in the future, you will be able to make some of those changes without the need to pay consultancy fees to help move you forward. As I've said, we'll promote industry best practice. We will use customizations rather than modifications where possible. We will include as much training as you're happy to take so that you become self-sufficient. We appreciate that's not suitable for everybody, but we will try and enable self-sufficiency where appropriate. We will provide a level of project management and project governance so that we won't sit back and watch you struggle. If there are areas that we need to help you with, or there are decisions that are challenging, or we do think you might be going down a road where it might be a mistake, we will have somebody there to say, actually, that may not be the best course of action. Would you like to consider this? And at least give you an idea of what can be done as an alternative. It might be you're going down that road because of some very valid reasons, but we will provide that extra project governance just to give you that peace of mind that things are moving in the right direction. And finally, once the project is over, we don't just drop them on. It's not just a case of, there you go, you've got it, we'll come back in another 5 years. We would like to actually maintain the relationship with you. We want to deliver a project that means that we are welcome to come back through the doors of your business, the other side of it, when it's finished. We will offer you dedicated account management and some support on an ongoing basis so that you are able to continuously improve your business, and future upgrades may not be as painful as the past upgrades have been. So we will be there to support you, to enable you to use IFS the best way possible for years to come. So that's it. I'd like to say thank you. I would also like to open the floor to any questions. If you have any concerns or questions on anything I've said, or you'd like to challenge me on anything, then please go ahead.
I can see a question coming through, Jo.
Okay.
How should I approach modifications during an upgrade?
Yeah, good question. And I know I've been banging on about this in the last half an hour. The way we prefer to look at modifications is, rather than you give us a list of these are the sort of 7 or 8 modifications I'm using now, can you tell me how much it's going to cost to move them into the latest version? We would prefer to take a more holistic approach. So we would say to you, okay, so if we're using out to cloud and you've got all the latest and greatest functionality, what functionality and what processes would you like to use to keep you moving forward in the future? And we would look at the processes necessary to use the core functionality in the future and see if that modification is actually still required. Because what we've found so far is that a lot of the modifications that are currently existing in sort of ALP 7.5, 8, 9, they've been put there because of a lack of perceived functionality in the product. And in some areas, we know that IFS has moved forward dramatically in the last decade. There have been some areas in 7.5 and 8 where functionality simply wasn't there, and therefore modifications were essential. We've now found that a lot of that functionality has been added, and therefore most of the modifications will not be necessary if we change the configuration and utilize some of the tweaks in functionality that we can use with the new functionality that's been made available. Admittedly, there are a few areas where that may not be the case, but rather than taking a mod and assuming it needs to be there and just replacing it, if you actually look at what the mod is trying to achieve, and that can actually be achieved using core functionality, that can be the better way to go. Any more questions? No? Okay, well, this isn't your only opportunity. If you do have any more questions, or you do think of something after this webinar is finished, then by all means email us. We'll happily come back to you and help you in the future. We will just stop this webinar right now, and by all means please log on to the Cedar Bay website in the future. It will be a copy of the webinar will be put there, should be there within a couple of days, and you can review this afterwards. Also, we'll send you a link to this, and we'll happily help you with any upgrade discussions or challenges you may have. So I think still no more questions. So thank you very, very much for attending the webinar. Really appreciate your time. We look forward to speaking to you all in the future.